From Boston, Crockett's Victory Garden.
Hi, I'm Jim Crockett, and welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. But you see, I'm not at my regular Victory Garden, but at a friend's house in the suburb. You can see behind me a 150-year-old farmhouse. There's this beautiful greenhouse built attached to it. And today I'm going to show you, and through the year, I'm going to show you things other than just plain vegetable growing. Now, one of the things we're going to show you first off here is some daffodils that are naturalized in the grass, just the stakes so that we won't trip over them for the moment. These daffs will be allowed to come up here and blossom. The foliage will mature, and eventually this will be mowed as lawn. But today, I'm going to prune a great big old pear tree, which I think must be 100 years old. I'm going to check on some grafts on an apple tree that we made just a year ago. We're going to sow some corn and plant some leeks, and we're going to plant a new asparagus bed. But let's look at this pear tree first of all, which must go at least 35 or 40 feet in the air. An ancient tree. I would say at least 100 years old. Though at that time, 100 years ago, we didn't have the dwarf trees which we have today. Now, this is not the kind of a tree that I would want to plant now. I would want to plant one which would mature at 8 to 10 feet, where I could pick all the pears with nothing larger than a stepladder. But this tree has been allowed to go for quite a while. You see all of these old branches in here. Even as short as I am, I can't walk underneath them. And so this is just for the sake of maintenance. We're going to start and do some cutting. The first one, we'll just take off this little side shoot here. That's certainly out of our way. Come around here and get rid of some of these others. Now this tree has been around so long, and it's been, you might say, in disrepair for so long that even the woodpeckers have gotten up into the tree. What I'm going to do here, you notice I cut a stub off here so that I could get a good grip on it. When I make this cut, I don't want that bark to cut down underneath, slip down, and make a big gash on the tree. I know that cabinet makers love to get a hold of pear wood because it's such a hard, fine wood that they can use for beautiful material. Now, I have there some 3 really nice clean cuts. While I'm at it, why don't we look at this pruning saw? You notice the saw itself is scimitar shaped. It has coarse teeth on it, and the teeth are set wide apart so that they cut quite a swath coming through the wood. That way the saw has a minimum of binding. Now this big branch, if I don't cut that one off up here first, the weight of it is apt to just tear it away, and I'd end up with a great big piece of bark torn off the tree. All right, even with a stub, I'm going to come underneath here and make a cut first of all. I just don't want to take a chance on having that piece of limb tear off the bark and leave a scar which will be hard to heal. Even a newly sharpened saw like this one takes a long time to get through. I should talk to you a minute about the pear itself. This pear is, I have eaten some of the pears from this tree. It's such an ancient variety, I have no idea of what it is. But the tree is well worth salvaging and is good for another 100 years if we take any kind of care of it at all. There we are. I like to hear that final sound when we get a pretty clean cut here. Now a cut such as this will heal from all directions. In 2 or 3 years, you never know that there had been a branch there at all. Now, last thing I do is to put some pruning paint on here. This helps to seal them a little bit. If the cuts are less than an inch. When we were clearing brush here yesterday, we found a very welcome addition to one of the plantings on this property. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Most of the brush that we were cutting was this pernicious stuff called buckthorn. Just a terrible weedy shrub. We'd actually come along and take that one right out by the roots. But I went over into here and I found in amongst this buckthorn a young wild apple seedling. Now, there's no way of knowing how this ever got here, whether somebody threw an apple core or what, but I'm going to make this into a flowering crabapple tree. The first thing we'll do is get rid of the rest of the buckthorn. Next we'll get this junk out of the way. There we are. Now, here is our young crabapple tree. The first thing we'll do for this one is to preparing it to get rid of some of these side shoots all the way up. Now the tree that I'm going to put on is called a Chinese tea crab, a lovely pink flowering plant. This will go up eventually to a height of maybe 12 feet or so. Will be directly visible from the living room windows of the house. How to make us a lovely tree. Now at this point I'm going to cut it right off like so, throw that away because this is where the graft is coming. I brought along what we call scions. Now the scion is the one which is the flowering crabapple itself. This strong root system here, which is already growing in the ground, you see, is going to supply us all the nourishment that we need to make this grow. With your knife, split this right on down as close to the middle as you can, about an inch. That's just like so. Then we'll take one of these scions. These are just a little more advanced than I would like them to be, but nevertheless I think they'll grow. And what we're going to do here is to make a wedge. And this wedge will fit right into the cut which I've made in the stalk. This is called the stalk. What we want to do is to make sure that those green edges touch. So that is called the cambium layer. Just pry that open a little bit with my knife. We'll set these two layers so that they just match one another. Now they have to match one another on only one side of the tree. They doesn't have to be the same thickness all the way around. We'll now take a piece of ordinary cotton string, just wind this round and round and round like that to hold it together. And I have right next to me my grafting wax. It's all heated up. Let's take a little bit of this stuff. Really sticky. You know, grafting wax is made a good deal out of beeswax. And all the grafting wax is going to do here is to seal this off so that the air can't get at it. Now that will grow. This spring, this summer, it'll probably grow another 1.5 feet. Inside of 2 or 3 years, we'll have a tree 4 or 5 feet tall. And that's all there is to grafting a tree. But while we have this grafting wax ready, I want to go over to this tree which we grafted a year ago, and then we'll see what we can do to that one too. You're looking at a success story of a tree we grafted in at the Victory Garden last year. and moved out here to the country. But I want to bring my grafting wax over here because while we were in Boston, we had one little accident. The cold frame cover flipped over and broke off some of the grafts. But I want you to see, now here's a Macintosh right here. See that bright new growth on it? A Gravenstein, a marvelous pie apple, applesauce. This is a beautiful new graft that's growing up on that. That's the Gravenstein. Over here is what they call an antique apple, one called the blue pear Maine, growing and beautifully. But over here on this other side, this is where the cold frame cover did its work. Now, you might say, why am I doing so much talking about grafting fruit trees? Well, we get so many questions on grafting that I think that we do it just one more time. When it's put on that particular one, let's see, find my grafts here. We're going to put on a Baldwin. Now, a Baldwin is another ancient tree. You can hardly find these apples to buy in a store, and yet this tree will produce these lovely Baldwins for generations to come. We'll start a label here. The grafting operation is a very simple one. I'm going to use my knife and split this down the middle. This is called a cleft graft. Split that down about an inch. Something about like so. We'll take one of these scions. Be sure that you have the right side up now, the buds that are pointing up, and I'll simply cut a wedge. And this wedge will fit right into the scion. Remember what I said, the size does not have to match exactly. It helps if it does, but it doesn't have to. Try to make that just about nice, smooth, easy cut. If you sharpen your knife, it helps. Slide that right in so that one edge touches together. Again, I'll use a piece of plain cotton string. I'll just wind this around like this. You'll find that grafting a fruit tree is a very, very simple operation. I'll take some of my grafting wax here. I'll try to get too much of it on my fingers. Now we'll simply cover these over. All of the cut area gets covered over, and we'll put a little drop on the end of it. Now I know that we'll end up with a Baldwin growing on this branch. Now one of the questions that I keep getting is, how do you tell the difference between a flowering bud and a leaf bud? These big fat fellows here, this is a flowering bud. Up on this branch just above it, these smaller ones are leaf buds. Here's another flower bud, a leaf bud, a leaf bud, a leaf bud. And that's your answer. Well, this is not only a good time of the year to graft trees, but this is a perfect time to get in that very earliest crop of corn. The ground is ready. What do you say we go over and plant some corn? Now, my friend bought this piece of property because he liked the site, but he also got some of the best soil in New England. He also got a bunch of witchgrass. Well, he used a selective weed killer on the witchgrass, and then he went about to preparing the soil itself. And I want to show you some of the best soil in New England. Wish I had it like this in my Victory Garden in Boston. Now, this was a sandy loam. To this, he started in by adding peat moss. Then he added leaf mold, and then compost out of his compost pile. Now, we've tested this soil this spring. The pH, by adding some lime to it, brought it up almost to 7. Absolutely perfect for just about every vegetable except potatoes that like an acid soil. And then, because we know that the rains have washed the nutrients out, was added some 10-10-10 fertilizer, which will add the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium that the crop needs to grow. Well, if you can see down through this row, various packages of seeds laid out, this is where the corn is going to go. This is north in this direction, so that the corn is at the north edge of the garden, won't be shading these other crops. Also, way down here is where we're planting the latest variety, the tallest variety. This is, by the way, is one called Sweet Sue. It's a yellow and white corn, very, very nice tasting. Then we have a butter and sugar corn in here, a medium, mid-season, mid-height corn. Up above in here we have Sprite, another lovely one. And then we're planting one I have never grown before called Blitz. Well, the soil has been all dug over, the fertilizer, everything has been added to the soil. So I now will show you this tool you've seen before, called my planting board. 4 feet long, with little notches at 6-inch joints and big notches at the foot joints. To find out, to make these places to plant the corn, we simply use a planting board across in both directions, and we now have we have a grid work spaced 1 foot apart, and the big reason for that is this. Corn is wind pollinated. If we were to make a single row of corn, the pollen would be blown to one side on the ground. But by having a minimum of 4 rows together, every kernel will be pollinated and will have those nice, fat, full ears of corn. The soil has been dug, fertilizer added, all ready to go, and you don't need any special tools at this point. I'll show you how I plant it. Should show you right off the bat that this is a little bit different from your ordinary corn in color. Instead of being yellow, it's pink. And it's pink because a very mild fungicide called Captan is on the seed. Now all that the Captan is doing is to protect the seed from that initial rot. And only just for a few days until it gets out of the ground. Now what I do is to drop 2 seeds at each of these intersections. And it's just about as simple a way to plant corn as I can think of. 2 seeds. Eventually we'll save only 1 plant. But to plant the seed, I just push it in the ground with my finger, roughly a half inch to an inch deep, cover them over like that. And that's all there is to planting corn. It's just that simple. Now, I don't like to compress the soil, but I can take a board and lay it across over here and reach from this other side, you see, and we can go ahead and plant our corn over here. So we can cover this whole thing without compressing the soil. But now, I said I was going to plant some leeks today, too, and let's just do that. I have some leek seedlings, which we started 2 months ago. Leek comes out of the ground looking just like little blades of grass, and here it is now about 5 or 6 inches tall, individual seedlings, which by late summer will have the diameter of a baseball bat. The plants will be so tall and some of the most delicious of the onion family that you could imagine. But to get it that way, first of all, you have to plant the leeks in a trench. That means that more of the stem will be blanched and be white and tender. That'll take care of the blanching. But to take care of the growth, I'm going to do my old trick of putting compost. This is right out of the compost pile, and that's going to go in the bottom. I can see some old corn cobs in there, some leaves and pieces of old corn stalks, all sorts of partially decomposed compost. And this, I'll tell you, is the secret ingredient of growing a good garden. Get this type of stuff underneath your crops, such as leeks. Now we can just kind of spread that out a little bit. I have 2 varieties of leeks that I'm planting today. This first one is a relatively new variety called Titan. And then the other one is going to be one called Musselburgh. It's been around for 100 years. You notice how light that soil is, so these little things can come out without having their roots damaged at all. Notice I'm planting them down in the compost at the bottom of the trench. We'll plant those, roughly 8 to 9 inches apart. Just as easy as so can be. Now, as these grow, I'll pull soil from the sides of the trench. And eventually this trench will be filled, but this great stalk of leeks will be coming up from underneath it. Let's move right up the row here. Love to see seedlings of this character going in the ground. You know, you grow your seedling onions, seedling leeks, the same way exactly. All right, that's about all that we have to do on leeks today, except that I said I promised you I would put in an asparagus bed today, and there's still time to do it, so that's what we're going to do next. Now, when it comes to planting asparagus, I like to plant that on the outside of the garden. The varmints aren't going to get at that very much, and it's one of those crops which just won't have to be cultivated for a long, long time. Or at least it won't have to be renewed, I should say, for a long time. Now, we've dug out a bed here 4 feet wide, getting out this heavy sod, as you see, this type of thing, because if you don't get this out of the garden, in the ground in the first place, you're just going to have agony from here on in. Now, this soil has been dug over, and we've added some cow manure to the soil. Remember, this crop is going to be here for 20 years or perhaps longer. We've dug out this whole thing 4 feet wide, has been enriched with the cow manure, and then in here we've dug a trench 18 inches wide, and it's about 8 inches deep below the present grade or the finished grade of the garden. Now, you keep hearing me talk about my secret ingredient, and that's compost. And we're going to put compost right down in the bottom of that trench for the asparagus, and I can guarantee you that if you will put compost in the bottom of an asparagus trench, you'll get in that first year's growth what you would normally get in 2 years. And that's no question about it, and you'll be picking some beautiful asparagus, and it's there for a long time to enrich the soil. So just kind of level that off. I see all sorts of stuff, old corn stalks and eggshells in this compost. Marvelous material. Make plants grow. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with what an asparagus, a 2-year-old asparagus root looks like. Well, this is the way it is when it comes. You can often see those little eyes coming out of it. But it doesn't grow this way. In the ground, it grows horizontally. So we're going to lay these out on the ground as though they were a whole row of octopuses laid out here about 18 inches, 2 feet apart. Spread them out so that the roots go in every direction, like that. And then all we have to do is to cover them up. And we're not going to cover them very deeply to begin with. We just cover around these so that the top buds, which you saw at the top, are roughly an inch or two beneath the soil. Now, that might seem as a strange way because we're planting these in a trench which is 8 inches deep. But as the summer progresses and these plants start to grow, we will pull soil in from the sides. And so eventually these roots will be 8 inches beneath the ground, where they'll always have a constant amount of moisture. What is more, they will be buried so deeply that no ordinary cultivation is going to ever disturb them or hurt that crown from which the stems will come each new year. All there is to planting asparagus, except that we will feed this asparagus with 5-10-5 or 10-10-10 during the summer, and it'll come up here like a beautiful garden of ferns. Well, see if we can answer a few questions today. I see a nice hay bale, and that certainly is a comfortable place to sit after you've been doing a little gardening on a spring morning. The first question from Stafford Springs, Connecticut. From whence comes the straw from which brooms are made? Well, this comes from what is called broom corn, or a type of sorghum. The original broom, by the way, is, as used in Europe, comes from a shrub which is called Cytisus scoparius. And if you go to a garden center and say, I'd like to buy a broom, you're very apt to be sold one of the most beautiful spring flowering shrubs that you could imagine, one with lovely yellow flowers. Question from New York. I have a 6-year-old flowering crabapple tree. It blossoms every year, but the growth on the east side is sparse. Is there anything I can do to shape this tree? Well, it sounds to me as if there must be some type of shade, either a building or a tree, that's breaking the sunshine from coming in on that east side. I think your tree is going to be lopsided unless you can get rid of some of that shade. That you can do a little bit by pruning, but I don't think you'll get it done other than, it's a matter of light. Not enough light to make the branches grow on that side. A type of a question from that I might expect from San Jose, California, about hyacinths. Why do my hyacinths always bloom at or below the ground level, never with a flower stalk at all? Well, unfortunately, California and other warm climates are just not particularly suited to growing those cool, loving hyacinths. What I would do is buy my bulbs in the fall, in October, plant them in pots, and put them in my refrigerator. Or maybe you have an extra refrigerator where you keep about 40 degrees for 15 weeks, keep the soil moist, then put them out in your garden, and I bet you'll get some good long stalks. Well, they say that's all the time we have. Next week, right in this very same place, we're going to plant some raspberries, we're going to plant some more blueberries, we're going to prune an ancient grapevine. I'm Jim Crockett from Crockett's Victory Garden, and I hope you enjoy the program every week.